And at the time, they were switching to Final Cut 7, and that's all I knew, right? So on the plane, I was like, well, maybe I need something to have to show them. So I downloaded all these YouTube videos with the airport, like internet connection, and I sliced together this promo, and I showed it to them when I got there. So I edited this promo on the plane, landed the next day, showed them the promo, and they wanted to hire me right on the spot, and I had not finished college yet.
Welcome to the Bias for Action podcast with your host, Michael Fang. With a PhD in applied physics focusing on quantum computing and a number of years in long-distance running, I hope to give listeners a chance to go behind the scenes of high performers across a wide range of disciplines and perspectives. Uncovering the mindset and habits of those who strive to be the best will help you improve your life and accomplish your goals with actionable advice. On today's episode, we have Myles Matsuno. After attending Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, Myles took on the role of technical director at ABC and worked on live programs such as the Academy Awards, NBA Finals, and Dancing with the Stars. Myles is now a Los Angeles filmmaker and content creator at Matsuno Media. His company has worked with big names such as Spotify and Michelle Obama. His award-winning short film, First to Go, Story of the Kataoka Family, reveals how his great-grandfather Ichiro became the first San Francisco Japanese prisoner of war. Myles recently directed, edited, and produced his first feature film, Christmas in July, which premiered at the Knox Film Festival in 2019. The film features a once prominent musician who, against all odds, tries to stage a last-minute celebration for a sick grandmother. Not only is Myles an accomplished filmmaker with guest interviews on NBC, CBS, and other news channels, he is a serious marathon athlete, as well as a husband and father for his wife Whitney and newborn child Koa. One of his current projects is We're the People, an online docuseries uncovering the little-known stories of humans trying to make a difference. With all that said, let's finally bring him on. All right, here we are with Myles Matsuno. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So let's really start with your filmmaking career. And one thing that you've often expressed is that storytelling. Basing your work off of the story rather than the camera or even the audio is what you really emphasize, and that story is really the base of everything that goes into what you do.
Right.
So how did you realize that, and realize that, this is what really matters?
I think, growing up and just watching a bunch of different films with my dad, he always wanted me to not just watch the big blockbusters that came out, but he would force me to watch some movies, like Streetcar Named Desire and stuff like that, where I necessarily at the time didn't really care for, but and at the time, those were really good camera movements, and some of those directors back in the day are legends. But I think that he made me focus on good storytelling. And as I got into college, that's kind of when the whole DSLR revolution began, where you could take a Canon 5D Mark II and shoot video and actually make something that really looked good. So all these people all of a sudden were photographers, but they started getting into video. You see a lot of well-known people now, that's how they got their start. Well, as technology got better and better and better, people were so focused on resolution over story. And I think that, it's really cool that you can have After Effects and make something explode, or, have aliens come down and it looks really good. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a good story, I don't think that that's going to stick with the audience member. And, I'm not saying that it won't stick in the sense how cool were those special effects in Independence Day at the time when that came out. And that also had a good story too. So that movie, you combine both, you're left with an everlasting impression. So I think that for me, knowing these things and knowing that, I like to read and I like a good story, it's always been at the forefront of my mind to be able to either like show a good story without words, just showing a story by someone's emotions or whatever, but also, you know, with the script with words. So story is always king for me, and I think that especially today with technology, you have your iPhone that can shoot 4K, you know, it's just, what are you shooting? What's that 4K that you're shooting? You know, it's like, where's the story behind it? Yeah, it looks good. The color correction's great. You can go, you know, make a feature film with your phone now, but like, where's the story behind that? And I think that that will always be important. I think, and as technology is getting stronger and better and cheaper and more affordable, story will be at the forefront, at least for me.
And since story has been with you since childhood, really, you went into college with that, but it's been over 10 years since you graduated from college. So how has your approach in filmmaking with this story-driven focus changed versus then and now?
I think for me, it's changed as I don't know if it's changed so much as like the inspirational aspect of it. I think that I see story in a different way now as you get older. You know, your viewpoints change, your just life changes, and I think your story will also change with that, right? So some of the things that I write now are a lot different than something that I would have written back in the day. Like, and also I'm better with structure and stuff like that too, how to tell a story. So the technical aspects that's changed too, but I think that story will also evolve and change as your story changes.
So speaking of the technical aspects, you were the senior technical director at ABC. And I knew that when you graduated from college, that wasn't the position that you wanted. You wanted, you know, something where you could create, something more interesting rather than dealing with all the hardware and the technology. So how did you deal with that change and accept that that was what you were going to be doing?
Yeah. So how I got into that position, when I came back home, because I went to school in Tennessee, came back home for the summer, I went to an interview at ABC for the marketing department. And at the time, they were switching to Final Cut 7. And that's all I knew, right? So on the plane, I was like, well, maybe I need something to have to show them. So I downloaded all these YouTube videos with the airport, like internet connection, and I sliced together this promo. And I showed it to them when I got there. So I edited this promo on the plane, landed the next day, showed them the promo, and they wanted to hire me right on the spot. And I had not finished college yet. So I was like, okay, well, I appreciate the offer, which was, at the time, like a crazy offer to, get an offer like that while graduating college, So I was like, thank you, but I can't just not finish college. Ended up graduating eventually, and then I came back. Well, that position was gone. So then they're like, well, we have an engineering department open. So I ended up applying there, and I had a 15-day trial. I had the background with the degree name, not really the background that I needed. And I just hustled and worked, and I learned the aspects of engineering, always knowing that I would want to go into back to the marketing department. I was like, okay, I'll get in, then I'll just weasel my way into the marketing department and do these promos and do all that stuff and work my way up the way I wanted to do it. Well, I kind of like fell in love with the whole engineering aspects of it, broadcasting and taking satellite dishes and fiber feeds and, doing patching, doing all this stuff that was very left-brained, And so in my mind, it's also creative. So it's a long story, but I ended up working my way up. And as technology evolved, I got to help build these control rooms and automation systems and do stuff like the Academy Awards and NBA Finals and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I know that you grew up loving basketball. So how did it feel to be able to work on something like the NBA Finals and be behind the scenes on that?
I will say there are a couple times where I almost missed rolling commercials and stuff because I was just so amped watching the basketball games, So it was like, yeah, I was felt like I was not working watching those games and working them from the studio.
Nice. So going back a bit, you mentioned that you went to college in Tennessee, and that also happens to be where you shot Christmas in July, and also where you shot Ella. So what keeps you coming back to those places to shoot your feature films and shorts?
That's a really good question. So with Ella, that film was kind of like my first big short film that I ever got to make, but that story actually took place in Chattanooga. I was going through a bad breakup at the time, and I was walking down the streets of downtown Chattanooga, and I envisioned this whole story of what is Ella today. So I always knew I wanted to go back and film it in Chattanooga. Christmas in July, though, is a different story. One of the producers on Ella, I called him when I was able to make Christmas in July, and I was like, hey, do you want to help me produce a feature film? And he's like, absolutely. And so I had two options. I can shoot it out in LA or I can shoot it out in Tennessee. For me personally, it'd be easier for me to, shoot in LA and control the environments out here. But out there, there's a lot of film incentives that I was able to, get a hold of. One of the big thing is permits. You don't have to get a filming permit to be on the streets of Chattanooga or Cleveland, Tennessee. We're out in LA, you need a filming permit everywhere you go, and that can cost $10,000. So immediately we're saving cash doing that. And then, working with my school to produce a feature film that we did, which is doing well. I think that was cool too, because there was a feature that came out before mine, but we were the first big production feature film. And so to be able to hire all these people from my school and hire people from Georgia or wherever and bring them to Cleveland and show that here's this cool small town in Cleveland and here's the university, and this is what we can do now. This is a product that we're making. I think it's cool for the school that it can attract a lot of students, and I love that school, prospective students. And then also I think it's cool that I was able to provide some type of inspiration for others that, wouldn't normally get an opportunity to work on a feature film out in a small southern town like that. So that the pros definitely outweighed the cons. And I think that just being comfortable in Cleveland too was another big thing, because I lived there for 3 years. So.
What do we do on Christmas? We open presents. Celebrate. We open presents.
Come on. As you know, Daniel, along with the Alzheimer's, your grandmother's heart is very weak. I think the best thing for her right now would be for her to see how much people really love her.
What's your big plan for Sue?
So you're gonna fake Christmas, Danny, during the hottest part of the year.
Thank you for this, sweetie.
That was from the teaser trailer from Christmas in July. Yeah, and with Ella being your first short film, I'm sure there was a lot of money that needed to be raised to make that happen. And you actually started a Kickstarter in 2012 to raise that last little bit of money. What, I guess, prompted the need for Kickstarter just to, get by that last little bit?
Yeah, so good old Kickstarter. That was when Kickstarter was just coming out. Kickstarter was I don't know, it was kind of revolutionary, because you can get other people to believe in your project and donate for the cause. And when I set it up, I was like, there's no way people are going to donate. What was it, $7,500 or something like that? So I just set it up, we made it, and we put it out there, and all these people started backing it. I thought that was really cool. But what prompted me was just because I was like, yeah, I can dip into my savings account and make this, but I think it'd be cool if other people would also want to be a part of some film like this. And also it's a good marketing tool too. It's you got a film that was successfully raised on Kickstarter. People reached out to me back in the day because of that, asking, hey, can we do a write-up on your film? I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Wow, must be nice to, have people want to write about something you've made. Yeah. Because it's not often that, especially if it's unprompted, many creators these days are asking people, hey, I'm going to send you a copy of this film or a copy of this product. Can you review it? And to have that come organically must have been amazing.
Yeah. especially, in 2012 when using a platform like Kickstarter, because it was kind of rare, maybe today people would be like, no, I don't want to write a movie about this dumb movie that you just made, but I don't know, maybe times have changed a little bit.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about Ever Ours. And so that was another, shorter film that you made before Ella. But I noticed that a commonality between these two films and even in Christmas in July is that the main subject of the film has a musical background. So why do your films or short films always feature someone who's musical or has this musical background? Do you have a musical background that prompted that?
I don't, but I love music. Not many people know this, but I sang in like a campus choir for my first year of college at the Master's College. The reason why I think music and story is one and the same, so I'm driven by music. I need to listen to music before I even start writing, before I even start editing anything. So I always have the same like 5 or 6 songs playing in the background, just looping nonstop. So it might drive, my wife crazy or whatever, but it's just how I work. So because music is one and the same for me, and because music plays such an important role for me, I think that naturally some of those things come out with storytelling, and Christmas in July, that just so happened to be like that. But with Ella and Ever Ours, 100% definitely, because it was, about a guy telling his story through his music. And I think, like you asked me in the beginning about why story is so important, it's like some of the best music has the best stories too, so if you can combine both of those in a medium like film, I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, and you also use a very specific composer, Chad Lawson. So how did you meet Chad, get connected with Chad, and how did you end up, working, using his music while you work, but also incorporating his work into your films? Yeah,
there's actually 2. So there's Chad Lawson, who I just met recently. Well, I guess not recently. I've known him for like 8 years now. But Emmanuel Davis is the guy. Him and I actually started back in 2010 with Ever Ours. And so I'm going to talk about Emmanuel first. So him and I, we kind of think the same. And it's kind of crazy how I will just start talking and he'll start playing the piano. And next thing you know, we have a score. Like, that's exactly how it works. Like, I will start telling him a story and I have it all like recorded on B-roll behind the scenes footage where we'll just start talking and he has his eyes closed and I'm just telling him a story. And next thing you know, he's like created this beautiful melody. And it's like, okay, I wish I could do that, So he scored Ever Ours. He scored everything almost that I've made. And then Chad, we just worked on We're the People, the first season together, and he's also on Christmas in July. It wasn't an original score or anything, but Chad is just like Emmanuel in the sense where I just tell him something or show him something, and next thing you know, he's made this amazing piece of music, which, Chad's just so talented. He did all the lore stuff. I don't know if you know what lore is, the Amazon podcast or show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like done all that stuff, and he's just super talented too.
So how did you get connected with Chad then?
I emailed him. Yeah, so I was working on my family documentary, First to Go, and I was stuck for months, and I could not get past the intro. And I was like, I have 11 different intros. I have no idea like what to do. And this is when Music Bed was just kind of becoming a thing, and Chad was on there. And it's just random classical music being played, and his song came on, and it broke through whatever I was trying to show. And so I was like, this is amazing. So I just Googled him and found his website, and then I emailed him, told him, everything that happened. He responded back, and we became good friends after that. So that's kind of how we met.
And now he's a huge hit, right?
Now he's huge. Yeah.
So let's talk about First to Go. You worked on that from 2015 to 2017. Why did that take such a long time to make?
Yeah, I filmed it in San Francisco, so I took 2 trips, and that took about a year because I went in the beginning of the year and the end of the year. But also, I had to file for documents with the government to be able to get those documents from the camps from my great grandfather, and you have to prove that you're related to him somehow. And so that took about 6 months. And so once I got all that, there was like 134 pages that they had records on him. Anything from like bank statements to letters that he wrote from the camps to everything which made me think about like if they were able to document all that stuff back in the day, like what can they do now? You know what I mean? That's just so crazy. Once I got all that stuff, it was really hard for me to be able to tell the story because it's obviously it's personal, but it was just a lot of getting a lot of archival footage and then trying to work through that documentary and then figuring out what's important and what's not important, because I was able to make a feature out of it, but did I really want to make a feature out of it? And it was just mainly for my family anyway. And so it was just making sure that I got the facts right, and to be able to do that, you have to go to the museums, you have to visit, the camps, Manzanar or whatever, just to get, I didn't go to Topaz, which I probably should have, but I did email them, and then I ended up giving whatever documents so that they could have it at their museum too. But just going to those places to get a feel for what it's like so you can put yourself in those shoes, So yeah, it took about, a couple of years to make it.
And you also, I mean, it probably brought you closer with your family as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And my grandma and I got so close. I mean, we were already really close, but my respect for her after like hearing her story and capturing that, it just, it just grew immensely. And I'm so happy that I was able to document this because, she's passed now, but it's like her legacy lives on, and I can pass this down for when Ko is older and be like, hey, look, this is your great grandma, this is what she went through. And this is, why my dad's here, or why I'm here, and why now you're here. It's like, that's cool to have something like that. And I think that it's important for people to document their family history if they can. We have the tools, we have a phone, but sadly sometimes people would rather do TikTok than record their grandparents.
Oh my God, don't get me started.
There was horse stalls, and they even built barracks. Those who lived in the horse stalls, they had to sleep on top of hay, and then the place smelled like horse dews. The toilet or the shower, there was no partition. It was all open. That was what they called a holding center. They called it assembly center.
I think that film First to Go really, not only did it tell everyone something about your family, but it also told everyone about the human condition. When everyone was at these camps, despite how hard life was, they still found a way to find beauty out of nothing. You were telling the story about how camp members would be collecting rocks and shells, and they built this beautiful garden, and it really tells you that when humans come together and focus on the community, it really is what enables humans to endure that suffering when you have someone else to suffer for.
Yeah.
So I guess what else did you learn from that experience or filmmaking experience that you didn't expect to learn?
Just the tenacity that generation, has and what they went through. I think that, and they still love this country, which you see all these things about, how horrible it was and all that stuff, and people don't really focus on the good that happened in the camps. And yeah, it was like a really bad thing. I'm not trying to say it wasn't a good thing. I'm just saying that like my aunt Toshi, she talks about in the documentary, even though it was so bad and how like she ate horse meat and all this stuff, and everything was taken from her. Like, she met her husband in the camps, and if it wasn't for the camps, then, her children wouldn't be here. It's like Genji and all those people, they wouldn't be here today, which means like my cousins wouldn't be here today. And that's her perspective. It's like good can come from bad situations too. Like beauty came from like just complete ugliness. So it's like, I think that's one thing that I learned too, is like, I don't always, okay, like I look at a situation like, yeah, this looks like really bad, but like, what are some of the good things that can come from this? And that's some of the things that both my grandma and Toshi talked about, which you don't really hear in other documentaries around the subject.
Right, and I think that's something you also have applied to life in terms of your position at ABC. It wasn't the position you wanted, but you made the best of what you could to get eventually what you did want.
Right.
So maybe let's get a little more on that ABC experience. You were there for 7 years, but I guess after 7 years, well, during those 7 years, a few years after you started your position at ABC, I guess you still had that inkling to be creative, and so you started your own company, Matsuno Media, right? But at some point you decided to leave ABC, and now that you're pursuing Matsuno Media full time, what was that switch? What was the messaging you got that made you think, hey, this isn't what I want to do at ABC. I want to, pursue this other thing full time. And how did you gain the confidence to say, hey, I can do this now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first got to ABC, everything was moving so fast, right? We were building studios from the ground up. We were both disaster recovery and also live with the Mountain Feed Network. And so that was all exciting. That was all creative. That was all new, And then it came to a point where I wasn't really growing anymore. And I was still pursuing film on the side, still doing my own storytelling and still doing all that stuff. But I would constantly ask for new projects, or I'd be like, can I try to build this or learn this? But because it is, I don't really know if it's because of the union or whatever, but it is union position. So it's like, you can't really just go learn other things because there's jurisdiction on it, right? So I get that. I totally get that. And I didn't want to like step on any toes either, So it was like, I kept asking and it just wasn't, it's like almost like you get to a point sometimes where it's like, you become almost too valuable in a position and they don't want to like move you because maybe you're the best at whatever you're doing, right? I'm not saying I was the best. I'm just saying that I was one of them, right? So it was just getting to a point where like our hours were getting crazy and crazy and crazy. Just like, we'd work, I don't know, 10 hours one day on like one shift and then maybe flip the other way to like come back in the morning, and they're just manipulating the hours like that and just cutting. And I was just thinking, do I really want to do this or do I want to take the time to grow? They're not letting me grow the way I want to grow. And so, and I love the people there, like, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying like, they're held to a certain restriction too, So it's like, it's not necessarily their fault that maybe I couldn't get out of the position because everyone was bound, like was in a bind. Right. And so Whitney and I would have conversations about it. And it's just like, she's like, you know what? You want to do filmmaking. You have the experience, you have the connections. It's not like you don't know what you're doing. It's like, why don't you go out and try it? And if all else fails, like you can say you did it. And then you can always just go back to like wherever you want to go and use this experience and use this knowledge that you gain on your own as well as ABC, and then just go and do it. So I was like, okay, we planned for it and then we did it. And it's been 3 years. Yeah, 3 years now. So since I've left. And, you always get those like cold feet afterwards and you're like, oh shoot, did I just make the best decision? But I definitely, when I've been able to make a feature film, definitely when I've been able to travel, definitely when I've been making commercials for like Spotify, Universal and all that stuff. So it's like, I think at the end of the day, I think it was a good decision, and I've grown so much more since I left.
So for those that don't know, what is involved in making your own feature film from nothing? Because you don't have Universal Studios behind you.
Right.
You're yourself.
Yeah. Oh man, and every independent filmmaker can attest to this. It's like you wear every hat, and you are constantly grinding and constantly just, you go through this motion of like, oh, this is amazing. This isn't so good. Oh my gosh, I suck. Oh my gosh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, I'm good again. So it's like this whole, rotation thing. It's like, which just plays with your emotions. So it's like a lot goes into it where like things that you don't even think about, especially if you're dealing with SAG or union stuff, is like there's certain restrictions and certain things that you have to abide by, and that's fine. Like it's just a lot of working around different pieces and putting them together. It's not just creative, at least when you're doing it the way that I had to do it. I was one of the executive producers. So it's like I had to produce the film as well as direct the film, and sometimes that was difficult, but at the same time, like I know that I can handle those things, and I know that, I don't know, I know that I would never put myself in a situation where it was too much, so it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. It's like the way I thought about it at first was like, okay, well, it's a feature film, 90 minutes. Let's just say that's like 4 short films. Just combine 4 short films, not a big deal. That's maybe a naive way to think about it, but that's how I thought about it. And I always just dive right into things without really thinking sometimes, where I just like, I'm going to go make a movie. All right, I'm going to go make a movie. And the next thing you know, I'm like halfway through the movie, like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do now? There's like 60 people looking at me for this answer. So,
there's, so much interest these days in people who want to do their own startups. Look for venture capital funding. How do the finances work with something that is creative, that when someone puts some money into it, it's not like a business where it's like, I want this much return in this many years. How do the finances of funding something like that work?
Right. Well, there's still kind of that aspect of it. You want to always provide the best ROI, right? So it's like, but for me, luckily, like I'm not really bound by angel investors. It wasn't like I had all these people coming to me and saying, or knocking on my door saying, sell the film right now. Like there's only 2 people that are involved in like financing the film. So it's like, when you have something like that, it's a lot easier to work with than having, some capital investment company like saying, okay, well, I need my investment money back now. Like, where are we here? So I think like money can come from, that's like a number one question that a lot of people ask, it's like, how can I make a feature film when I don't have the cash? Or how can I even do something like make a short film without the cash? Well, it's like, know your skills and learn the skills, right? So I was able to save a lot of money because I also taught myself a lot of different things. And that all came from doing the 48-hour film festivals, being able to edit and shoot on a fly really helped me personally to be able to make a feature film that's of like good substance, So I think that, I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
It answered it without going too far into the weeds. So
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that we actually have in common, which is running. So you mentioned that ever since you started running, you were able to use that time and find creativity. How have you used running in other ways? Because I know not only do you run a lot, but you run very quickly. So, when I imagine you running at 6:30 pace at your 10 miles runs, I wouldn't be able to think about anything. I'd be like, this is an up-tempo run. I am putting a good amount of effort in, but you somehow seem to be able to just come up with ideas while running at 6:30 pace. So how does that happen?
I don't know. Today I thought of some good ideas while on my 20-mile run.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Like I get lost in it, and you're fast too. Don't even try to pretend. Everybody, Michael is fast too. So let's see. Running is a way for me to just be able to think, right? So the same as taking a shower. Like I get a lot of great ideas while taking a shower. I don't know why. The same thing happens when I'm running or when I'm driving. And so that time for me running, you know, besides just storytelling, for me, it's also a way of like getting to the finish line. That's why I think I like marathons so much, because like life, right? You have your ups and downs, but eventually you go to the finish line. And I think, you know, making a movie is the same way. Like, honestly, I don't think I would be able to make Christmas in July in the way that I did without getting into running first, which sounds crazy, but it's like I kept just thinking, I'm going to get to the finish line. You know, it's like 26.2 miles. You know, it's like I will get there eventually. And that's how I view a lot of different things. I'll get there eventually. And some days I can run fast. Some days I can't run that fast. You know, it just depends. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's a way of life now. So a lot of good times running.
Yeah, and you mentioned how when you first approached the feature film, you thought, oh, I can just, you know, put together 4 short films. That's like the equivalent of saying, you know, oh, maybe I can put together 4 10Ks.
Right.
But you know, after running marathons, you know, it's not like that.
Right. True.
So you talked about signing up for your very first marathon 3 weeks out, and you basically, with 3 weeks of training, you were able to finish your first marathon. Like, how did you approach that mentally, and how did you have the confidence to say, oh, I could do something like that?
Well, I was at Barney's Beanery with my friend Ken, and we had like 2 beers, and he's like, I'm running the LA Marathon. We're talking about, I was like, I've always wanted to run that because I remember watching my uncle train for it. And I signed up. I was just signed up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to run it with you. And honestly, preparing for it, I never ran more than like 8 miles. I played basketball. I was playing basketball a lot at the time. But it goes back to just saying, okay, well, it's 1 mile. I have endurance. So, okay, why don't I just run? I'll just keep going until I start crashing or whatever, you know? So it's like, I took the same approach of running a marathon as like everything else that I do. It's like, just get out there and start. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, but eventually you'll get to the finish line. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, you can be hospitalized, but.
Right. So given that it was your first marathon, I heard that you used a Snickers bar for fuel.
I did.
Is that all you used throughout the whole race?
Oh my gosh. So what I did at the expo is I bought a belt, and I had like 2 water bottles at a Snicker bar. I had like power bars. I had goo. It was ridiculous. Like probably the worst fueling source ever. But I bonked at like mile 21. I was like, this is so hard to do. And I was just eating a Snicker bar, just walking and eating a Snicker bar. You know, hungry, why wait?
Snickers, if you're listening to this, we need a podcast sponsor. and you know, like you wrote about, you know, running and rejection is, you know, you're not always going to get the result that you want. Mm-hmm. And hearing about your Chicago Marathon last year, maybe you can elaborate more in a second, but you know, again, did you approach Chicago Marathon with that same mentality?
Yeah, Chicago, I probably shouldn't have ran. But I was already out in Chicago, as you know, and, you know, that story is wild. I got really sick at the airport, leaving on an overnight flight, throwing up at the airport nonstop. Flight was delayed by 12 hours. Eventually got there, but I'm still throwing up, and I was like drinking Pedialyte, got an IV for hydration because I was just so dehydrated. And, you know, I was like, I gotta run the marathon. And so as soon as I started, I like had to go to the bathroom like 10 times before the race started. And so I just was like, at mile 2, I was like, I need to drop out. There's no way I'm gonna make it. That I just can't make it. And I don't know why. It's just my mentality of like, just get to the finish line. You'll get there eventually. I ended up running a slower time that time than I did my first marathon I ever ran. And so, which was wild to me, but I don't remember the race. I remember all the porta potties, but yeah, it was crazy, just throwing up and running. And yeah, that's why I love marathons. Just
You
kidding.
never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. But yeah, I probably shouldn't have ran that. My mom was very mad at me after that race.
But you came back
I did.
at the next race at CIM and you PR'd by a huge amount.
I did. Yes.
So what do you do to prepare yourself for running every day? What does your morning routine look like?
My morning routine is like I will get up, do my meditation and my journaling, and then while I'm drinking coffee, and then I check my stocks, and then I would usually drive to the Rose Bowl and use that time to like connect or think about the run or talk to my mom or whatever, and then I just go back. So for me, it's not so much like I've gotten to the point where I don't have to like force myself to go run, be like, yeah, there's days where I'm like, oh, I really want to run. I got to get out there and I got to go run, as you know. But it's just become part of a routine now. Just like I fit it into my life, just like a lot of other different things, So yeah, it's kind of like my morning routine.
Yeah, you talked about how you use running and showering as a way to come up with these creative ideas, but you also have meditation. So you're waking up, you're meditating, again, letting, ideas just flow freely. You're driving to the Rose Bowl with ideas and running with it. If you think about it, you're actually working in a sense, all throughout your day, despite doing all these other things.
Yeah. The thing about being a storyteller or just a creator or whatever is like your brain never stops. I think your brain never stops either. I think you're always thinking about things. But I think that like I'll be sitting there and I'm like literally working, even though it looks like I'm just chilling, doing nothing. Like, but I'm thinking of like, how the heck can I get this story? Like I'm stuck in this editing spot. Like, how can I work through it? So my mind, I get so tired, or I'm just thinking like, I didn't do anything, but I'm just exhausted mentally, and which then you become exhausted physically, right? Because you've just been thinking all day. And so by the end of the day, sometimes I'm just so tired, but yeah, I mean, I forgot what I was saying.
Oh, I mean, you're just always working, right? Yeah.
Yeah, always working.
You must be a little tired from that 20-miler.
Yeah, the coffee's wearing off now.
Yeah. So how does having your first child, Koa, this was January 19th, a few months ago now, how has that, helped you in your creative thinking or hampered you somewhat because of all the extra responsibilities you have to deal with?
Oh, yeah. Great question. It's done both, right? Where I don't necessarily have all the time to be able to do some of the things I did before. And Whitney's been awesome where she's like helped me and I've helped her too, but like more so her just like letting me be creative, and set up my studio in the garage and stuff like that, moving it out of Glendale where I can go in there for like 2 or 3 hours at a time and just edit or work on things, but it's definitely helped me be more creative in the sense where I start before he was born and even after he was born. Maybe I'm not writing as much, but I'm definitely coming up with a lot of different stories and cool concepts and ideas that I write, like an outline for. I just tuck it away and I'll come back to it later. And I know I can pick that back up and then work on that. So with Koa, it's opened up a whole new wave of creativity, something where I didn't really expect to happen. And it's not like I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all these new ideas all of a sudden, maybe it's like creativity within projects that I already started, new ways of looking at the story of what I was making before. So it's definitely helped in that situation.
Yeah, and speaking of stories, that's also the main focus of the We're the People project. And so one thing I always was curious about is, you have all these different characters for your We the People, channel. How do you find these people and how do you say like, oh, that's interesting. That can go in this.
Yeah. So the whole point behind the Where the People series is everybody has a story, right? You have a story, I have a story. Those people walking across the street, they have a story. And everyone's story is interesting to me, like how they got started, what it's just a way of listening to someone else's story. And sometimes people cry when they're telling me their story or something. Sometimes I have to protect certain things that they say, that I don't want other people to know, because people do end up becoming vulnerable. But it's one of those things where, at least with the first season, I knew almost all of them. But each one had their own story. And so it's all about just, I don't prepare necessarily like going into those types of situations, because how do you prepare for that? Like, it's not my story. It's like I can ask generic questions, but then at the end of the day, I'm going to like, after those 3 generic questions, they're going to say something, and then my mind's going to think, oh, I want to know more about that. Like, and then why are you doing that? Like, what's the point of why do you act? Why are you a pastor? Why are you a doctor? Why do you work at Starbucks when you have a law degree? It's like, I want to know those stories. And I think that it's important for people to hear those stories, because a lot of times we just hear stories of just successful people. It's like, you might hear a story of like Mark Zuckerberg and how he started, and yeah, that's super inspiring, but it's also really inspiring to hear the woman that's working at Starbucks and also working somewhere else, let's just say Vaughn's or something, working 7 days a week to put food on the table for her child. Like, I want to know those stories too. And I think if a lot of people can relate to stuff like that, like humanity can relate to those things. So the whole point of the series is like, finding inspirational stories and why people do what they do. And a lot of the times, like, it's really cool just to hear at the end of it, be like, thanks for capturing my story. I thought that, I never get to tell it, or, it's like someone does care about why I'm here,
How do you, what is your strategy for drawing an audience to this sort of content? Because in this day and age, it's all about who can make the catchiest thumbnail on YouTube, right. Who can make the clickbaitiest title.
Right.
How do you get an audience, number one? How do you keep them interested?
Yeah. With this series, I'm like really bad at that. So I don't really, and this sounds bad, but for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can spend an hour of my time trying to come up with a title and a thumbnail or something, like take a picture of them with making a funny face or whatever. But like, that's not the point of the series. So I want to be authentic to that. And, I think that when I see the comments, especially on Facebook, because YouTube doesn't really have too many comments, but on Facebook, it's like done really well. And it's just easier to share, right, on Facebook, and then someone else shares it and whatever. But some of those comments, man, are like really cool, like, and especially in real life, when I film my friend Travis Robinson, who works in diversity and inclusion and at UMG Universal, and just captured his story of why he does what he does. And, he was so authentic to himself. Like, I didn't really have to do anything or say anything for him to like guide him. I just literally just found the story, just listening, editing the footage, and Chad put together some awesome music for that. Some woman came and knocked on his door that she had known that they knew each other, and just said, hey, left a voice message on his answering machine doorbell or whatever, just saying like, I watched your Where the People episode and it inspired me so much. And I just want to say thank you for telling your story. Thank you for being a voice for other people, and, blah, 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 blah. And so it's like, those moments, even though like I'm behind the scenes, like I think that's so powerful and that's so cool, where, yeah, I might not have the coolest clickbait or whatever, but how many people that are getting 2 million views on some dumb video where they're like eating something as fast as they can, how many lives are they truly impacting? Like I just made with Travis's video with that one person. To me, that means a lot more than 1 million views, So it's like, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's hard to get people to view something when it's not super flashy. But yeah, I mean, people watch it, so.
Right. And it's a question of, I think, of how much does what you're doing give you fulfillment?
Yeah.
I'm sure if you ask those people making clickbaity content, it's not fulfilling their life. They're just trying to make a living with what they're doing. Whereas what you're trying to do is you can look back on it and say, wow, I changed someone's life, or I changed multiple people's lives. And when you're doing something like that, it's more about the quality than the quantity at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like what we talked about, story, right? So it's all about the story.
Right. So we are coming to the end here.
Okay.
And what I like to do at the end is a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. You're just going to say the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to work hard or play hard?
Work hard.
What does your perfect weekend look like?
Weekend?
Weekend.
Chilling with Koa and my wife and running.
During runs, music or podcasts?
Music.
Premiere or Final Cut?
Premiere.
Hardest race so far?
Ventura.
Guilty pleasure song?
Anything Taylor Swift.
Most,
No, change my mind. Can I change my mind?
Yeah.
The Greatest Showman.
Okay. Most overrated film?
Oof. I don't know.
Most underrated film?
Black Swan.
Favorite post-run meal?
Croissant.
Finally, what book, blog, or podcast would you recommend?
The book I just gave you. Bob Iger, The Ride of a Lifetime or something.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was it. That was Myles Matsuno. You can find Myles at Instagram at Myles_Matsuno, or subscribe to his YouTube channel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, of course. And you can also check out his website, which is just MylesMatsuno.com. Thank you.
Thanks.